Bear down. Jalen Carter, the most explosive defensive tackle in the entire league, the same guy Ryan Poles passed on back in 2023, is sitting in Philadelphia on an expired contract with the Eagles, having no clue what to do with him. And the Bears made a call ESPN confirmed. But before you get hyped, I'm going to tell you exactly why that trade could be the worst move Poles makes this year, and why the timing matters way more than the name. And while Philly sleeps on Carter, CLOWNEY is still out there. 3 Pro Bowls, 8.5 sacks in 13 games last season. Sources say the Bears are in the mix, but there's a team in the NFC North that, according to a league executive, has a much stronger shot at closing this deal. And if that team locks him up before Chicago does, you're going to feel it come October in a very specific way. And to close, Bear goggles on, drop something most people slept on. There's a contract situation with a rising Bears star that the front office at Hollis Hall is deliberately in no rush to resolve. And once you understand why Poles is waiting, you realize that's not a sign of weakness. It's the exact opposite. All of that right now. I need you to fully understand the Jalen Carter situation before you start either fantasizing about it or dismissing it entirely. Because there are 2 narratives running at the same time, and both of them are incomplete. The first one goes, Jalen Carter is available, the Bears need a defensive tackle, make the trade now. The second one goes, Poles passed on him once over character concerns, and if Philly is making him available, that's a massive red flag. Both have some truth to them. Neither gives you the full picture, and I'm going to try to give you that full picture. Let's start where this whole thing begins. Jeffrey Simmons. The Tennessee Titans defensive tackle just signed a 3-year, $106 million extension. That's $35.3 million per year on average, resetting the DT market by $4 million over what Chris Jones currently makes. Why does that matter for Carter? Because Carter is younger than Simmons. He's more explosive as a pass rusher. He has 2 Pro Bowls in his first 3 seasons. If Simmons is worth $35 million, Carter is going to ask for more, probably $32 to $35 million annually as his floor. And Philadelphia just extended Jordan Davis to $78 million over 3 years, and doesn't know if they can afford both guys at those numbers on the same defensive line. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated was direct about this recently. Philadelphia is being cautious with Carter. The team's plan is to wait, and the reason for that wait has 2 faces. First, there are real concerns about his health. Carter played only 11 of 18 games last season with shoulder problems on both sides. He wasn't lifting weights for weeks. He received PRP injections in both shoulders during the season. For a defensive tackle whose game depends entirely on first-step explosiveness and upper body strength to handle blockers, that is a signal any responsible GM has to evaluate carefully before committing $30 million annually. The second factor, the one nobody wants to say out loud, but that's absolutely there, the maturity concerns that followed Carter out of Georgia. They didn't magically disappear when he signed in Philly. They've persisted quietly. And Howie Roseman knows exactly what that means when you're trying to structure a $100 million contract with protections. So what does all of this mean for a potential trade? Well, here's the real situation based on what beat reporters have actually confirmed. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported back in March that the Eagles received trade calls on Carter after they extended Davis. Easton Butler of 247 Sports confirmed the Bears are among 5 franchises that made those calls, alongside the Packers, the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Raiders. That's a lot of noise. But there's an enormous difference between an exploratory phone call and an actual trade. And I genuinely don't believe Poles is ready to pull that trigger yet. Here's exactly why. The Bears didn't select Carter in 2023 because Poles had off-field concerns. That was a conscious, documented decision that you can debate in hindsight, but it had an internal logic at the time. The question I keep coming back to is, what has changed between 2023 and now that would make Poles view Carter differently? And the honest answer is, I don't know. The health concerns stack on top of the character concerns. And at Philadelphia, the team that drafted him, that knows him from the inside, with Howie Roseman as the GM who almost never moves players of value, if that team is considering moving him, listen, that is not a sign of strength from Carter's side. That is a team telling you something in code. Now look, that doesn't mean the trade is impossible or that it makes no sense under any scenario. There's a path where Chicago does move on Carter, but it's a very specific path with very specific conditions. Let me break it down. The scenario where Chicago going after Carter makes the most sense is not now. It's the 2027 offseason. Here's the reasoning. By 2027, the Bears can release Grady Jarrett and Dayo Odeyingbo without catastrophic dead money, which frees up roughly $28.5 million in additional cap space. With that cap room open and Caleb Williams potentially on an extension, the financial fit completely changes. On top of that, if Carter plays a full season in 2026 and his shoulders look healthy, the medical uncertainty drops significantly. And if Philadelphia still hasn't extended him by 2027, The negotiating dynamics also shift because Carter will be in the final year of his deal, his urgency to move goes up, and his leverage actually shrinks. The cost in 2027 would probably be a mid to late first-round pick plus another meaningful asset. The Bears own all their picks over the next 2 years. That trade is financially doable, but you'd be paying that first-rounder for a player coming off a season with injury history who'd need an immediate extension at $30+ million a year. Is it worth it? That depends entirely on what the Caleb Williams contention window looks like at that point. Look, I could be wrong on the timing, but my position is this. If POLES goes after Carter in 2026, you're giving up a first-rounder in what might be one of the deepest drafts in years for a player with mixed health and maturity signals in a year when Caleb's payday is approaching. That's too much risk stacked into one decision. POLES is a methodical GM. He doesn't make that kind of move driven by hype. What I do believe is that the Bears are watching this very closely, and if Philadelphia turns up the heat on the trade market as the season unfolds, Ryan Poles will be in that conversation. For now, Carter's name lives on the keep tabs on it list, not on the we're making this trade tomorrow list. And with all the noise this generates, that, to me, is exactly the right posture for a franchise that is building for the long run. Okay, fam, but if the defensive picture worries you, with or without Carter, what's coming next is going to worry you even more. Because there's a 33-year-old edge rusher with the pedigree of a number 1 overall pick who is still sitting on the open market. And the story of who is really chasing him is a lot more complicated than the headlines are telling you. I'm going to be real with you right from the start on this one, because I've seen too many headlines saying Bears are favorites for CLOWNEY, and that is not exactly what the sources are saying, and the nuance here matters. What Jason LaCanfra of Sports Boom actually reported is this. League sources see Chicago as one of the likely destinations for CLOWNEY, along with Detroit and Green Bay. But he also reported that one league executive has a specific hunch that CLOWNEY ends up in Green Bay. That is a massive difference between a headline that says Bears are the favorite and the reality of what is actually happening. The Bears are candidates. They are not the favorite. And if CLOWNEY ends up in Green Bay next to whatever is left of the Packers' pass rush while Micah Parsons recovers from his ACL, man, that is a scenario that, as a Bears fan, I need a minute to process. But let's talk about CLOWNEY himself, because I think the narrative on him in 2026 is getting lazy in both directions. The people who want to sign him now talk about him like he's the same CLOWNEY from Houston in 2014. The people criticizing the idea talk about him like he's an old body walking toward retirement. The reality, as always, is in the actual numbers. In Dallas last year, CLOWNEY played 13 games with only 6 starts, 12 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble, 40 total pressures, and 29 QB hurries and 372 total snaps. That ranked him 18th overall among qualifying edge defenders in terms of pressure efficiency in 13 games, with 6 starts. That is not a finished player. That is a player who still has juice when he's managed correctly. His projected market in 2026 sits around $5.7 million on a 1-year deal. For context, he signed with Dallas last year for $3.45 million. That means his production in Dallas earned him a moderate raise. And $5.7 million on the Bears cap in 2026 does not break the financial structure of this team. You're not mortgaging the future. You're bringing in a veteran pass rusher at the price of a mid-round depth player. But is that enough for Da Bears? That's the real question. Montez Sweat is the number 1 edge rusher in Chicago, and when he's healthy and locked in, he can be genuinely disruptive in this conference. But the number 2 on that line right now is Austin Booker in his 3rd year. Booker has upside. Booker had moments last year that make you think. But upside in year 3 and consistent pass rush against NFC North offensive lines are very different things. The Bears finished last season near the bottom of the entire league in pass rush win rate and quick pressures. That in a year where the NFC schedule is going to include Caleb Williams hunting for a Super Bowl run. That pass rush level does not cut it. My personal position on whether the Bears should sign CLOWNEY? Yes, without hesitation. At $5.7 million, he is the best risk-to-reward ratio available on the free agent market right now for the position they need most. You're not being asked to sacrifice anything from the future. You're not being asked to break the cap. You're being asked to bring in a 13-year league veteran with 3 Pro Bowls who is coming off his most efficient season in years by pressure per snap, and plug him into a defensive line with Dennis Allen as coordinator. A guy who knows exactly how to deploy a player like this. The more important question isn't whether the Bears should sign him. It's whether the Bears front office is going to act before Green Bay or Detroit takes him off the board. Because CLOWNEY has made it clear he is in no hurry. He's said training camp is not a prerequisite at this stage of his career. His recent history shows he has signed with teams in August multiple years running, so this is not getting resolved in June. But when it does get resolved, if the Bears are on the wrong side of that decision, and they're watching Clowney blowing past their offensive line in a Packers jersey come October in Hollis Hall. That is going to hurt in a very specific way. And for anybody telling me the Bears already have enough internal pass rush to compete, keep it a buck, the internal pass rush in 2025 was not good. Adding external help doesn't close the door on Booker's development. You can do both at the same time. To close out, something that reads minor in the headline, but that I actually think has more layers to it than people are crediting, bear goggles. On Dropped a Piece today, making the argument that the Bears should be in no rush to address what the media is calling an urgent contract situation with one of their rising stars. And here's my take on this, and it might be a little controversial. When I hear fans frustrated that the Bears aren't extending someone fast, almost every single time they're confusing media urgency with actual business urgency. Ryan Poles has shown repeatedly that he negotiates from strategic patience, not panic. Look at how he handled Caleb Williams' situation. Look at how he approached Montez Sweat's deal. Look at how he restructured Cole Kmet's contract before the draft, instead of moving him when he had the opportunity to get a pick. Every time Poles has taken his time, he's come out with a better deal than if he had acted under pressure. The argument bear goggles on is making is correct. In contracts for emerging NFL players, timing matters more than speed. If you extend someone before they've proven their maximum value in the league, you're paying for projection, not production. If you wait until that production establishes itself, you're paying for certainty. Yeah, sometimes you pay a bit more in total, but you pay with significantly less risk of getting locked into a bad contract. And in the context of this specific roster, where the Bears have major financial commitments approaching with Caleb Williams at the center of everything, being careful with every peripheral extension is not timidity, it's smart cap management. If the supposedly urgent situation isn't urgent for the player and isn't urgent for the team, then it is probably not urgent for anyone. Trust Poles here, not because he's infallible, but because every time people said the Bears should have moved faster, he waited and won. And the times he did move fast, drafting Caleb at number 1, locking up Ben Johnson, those turned out perfect. That is everything I've got for you today, fam. And look, all 3 stories today have one thing in common. DAW Bears are being asked to make enormous decisions with incomplete information in a market moving fast, with a contention window that depends on keeping the financial architecture intact. And what gives me confidence isn't that Ryan Poles is perfect. It's that so far he has proven he thinks 3 moves ahead when the rest of the world is reacting to what just happened today. Jalen Carter is a 2027 conversation if everything breaks right. Clowney needs to be signed before Jordan Love is thanking the Packers front office in a press conference. And whatever contract situation is coming, Poles is going to resolve it on his timetable, not Twitter's. Bear down, always. If this video made you think, drop a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and tell me down in the comments. Do you bring Clowney to the Windy City right now, or do you let Austin Booker prove he can handle the responsibility? I want to read every single one of your answers. Navy and orange forever.